Welcome to the root of all success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs unlocked success and how their stories can help you do the same. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason has built multi-million-dollar businesses that have been featured in Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. His life's mission now is helping entrepreneurs live what he calls #the exit lifestyle. Introducing TEDx speaker, mastermind leader, author, entrepreneur, cigar aficionado, motorcycle enthusiast, and host of The Root of All Success, the real Jason Duncan. The real Jason Duncan.
Welcome to a very special edition of The Root of All Success. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and today, if our release episode dates work right, today is December 30th when this is being released, 2022, and this episode is just me. I'm going to be doing a year in review for 2022 and just kind of talk about all the things that I experienced this year, and a lot of which the podcast had a lot to do with. So I have a special offer that I'm going to make at the end of this. So stick around to the end. I'm going to do a little special offer, something brand new that I'm doing in 2023. So stick around. You don't want to miss that. I'll talk about that at the end. So this year has been an interesting year. If I think back over to the last few years, I know that in 2019, my wife bought me this Blue Yeti microphone that I'm talking into right now because she knew that all these years I've been talking about, I want to do a podcast. And I never did it, never got around to do it. And she gave me the microphone in December, Christmas of 2020 or 2019. And I didn't record the first episode of this show until December 23rd of 2020. So it took me almost a year before I finally pulled the trigger. Thanks in large part due to my coach at the time, Mitch Russo, was encouraging me to do it. And he, along with others, said, you really need to do this. And I finally did. And now this is episode 123, if the numbering system is correct. But we're well over 100 now. But 2019 was the worst year of my life. That year was a year where I had a friend betray me on a business deal and completely ruined our friendship. And that sucked. And there was a lot of money involved in that as well. So that sucked. I had some family issues that weren't exactly pleasant. They were going through at the time with a family member, and dealing with that just caused a lot of anxiety and stress and sadness. Luckily, that all resolved itself and everything's fine now. But that was going on in 2019. And then I had a business partner termination for my business at that time that just about bankrupted me and my business, and certainly left me wishing that the Lord Jesus would come back soon, because 2019 sucked. And I know I was talking to another guy the other day that he said that 2022, this year, was his worst year ever. And I know what that feels like. I know when you go through a whole year and just nothing seems to work right. Whether it's family, business, friendships, whatever it happens to be. And I had that all hit me at once. And I think back to my life, I had a pretty charmed life. I grew up in a great family, had good opportunities, went to a decent, public school system, got a college education, married to my high school sweetheart. I mean, my life has been grand. It's been fantastic. And 2019 was like that year when everything decided to say, well, Jason, you've never experienced loss and you've never experienced pain and enemies. Like, I'd never had enemies before that were worth talking about, of course. And we're going to give it to you all in 1 year. And that's what happened. So coming out of 2019 into 2020, I was thinking, man, this is going to be the best year ever. I finally got my business set, recovered after the partnership issue that almost bankrupted us and put out of business. But coming into 2020, it was hopeful. I was going to step away from daily operations and exit without exiting, which that's what I talk about. It's what I teach my clients in the Exeter Club and my 10-hour entrepreneur course. So I knew 2020 was going to be fantastic. And 2020, man, I don't have to tell you what happened. 2020 was pretty rough. 2021 was somewhat of a bounce back year, kind of coming back a little bit, but still sucked because, frankly, what the government did to us during COVID and the lies that they told and the shutdowns and the whole mask BS that happened and the vaccination stuff. I mean, all of that had far-reaching effects that I don't think yet we know how bad it was. And for those of you that bought into it, I'm sorry you bought into it. I never did, and I'm glad that I didn't. But that didn't affect. Just the fact that I didn't buy into it doesn't mean it wasn't the result of it wasn't real. In other words, the result of the shutdowns, the result of the people saying, "Hey, if you don't wear a mask, you're killing grandma," the result of not being able to go to my grandfather's funeral, the result of people not going to the hospital because they didn't want to get exposed to some cold virus. Like that, the effects of that were real, even though I think a lot of it, the whole thing was not exactly what they told us that it was. But we pressed on. So 21 was kind of the year to the world to finally say, hey, we got to get this COVID thing behind us. Let's move on. So 21 was a decent year. 22 for me actually turned out to be pretty good. So as an overall review of the year, it was a pretty good year. A lot of things changed in my life this year, significant changes, bigger changes that I made in a long, long time. For example, we lived at, we moved into what we thought would be our forever dream home in 2018. And in 2020, the end of 2021, on my wife and I were on an RV trip down in Key West. We were contemplating life, and we made the decision while we were down there to sell the house because it just really didn't fit the lifestyle anymore. It didn't fit what we wanted. It was a lot of upkeep and maintenance. And so we sold, and we didn't buy anything. Like, we're living in a rental house now, and we don't mind the house. It's about half the size of what we had before, but we don't mind the house. But I thought when we moved in here, we probably never would buy another personal residence. But now, after being here almost a year and having to re-sign the lease, and the REIT that owns this place, First Key Homes, is absolutely terrible. I don't even mind saying that because they're terrible to work with. Everything about it is. I think if you're selling your house, please don't sell to a real estate investment trust because they're killing the average American person. I mean, we happen to be in a blessed with means to be able to afford it, but the rent, I'm not going to say it publicly, but it is insane what they're charging for this house. And they do zero service to help us. If we ever call any maintenance, they don't take care of it. So the rental market is kind of new for us. So that was a big change in 2022. But I'm looking at 2023 with great expectation. We're hoping to buy some land and build a house that will, in fact, hopefully be our forever home, not ever have to move again. And we love our life. I mean, our kids are doing good. My son, who moved out on his own a few years ago, he's doing the struggles that any early 20s is trying to figure out life and figure out what he wants to do with his life. Our daughter still lives with us. So I don't have anything to complain about that's worth complaining about. But I read some good books this year. I read some great books in 2022 that really changed the way I see the world, and they have made a significant and really quick impression and everlasting effect on me. First of all, I read the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna hold up a couple of these books that I read just so that you can see it, so you know what I'm talking about. But this is actually this is the workbook, the action guide. But Outwitting the Devil is a book written by a guy named Napoleon Hill, and so I'm also going to talk about the other book I read by him, Think and Grow Rich, but I'm going to talk about Outwitting the Devil. So I found Outwitting the Devil by accident on YouTube, and the entire script of Outwitting the Devil is on YouTube for free, and it's actually they read it to you. And the book is it's Napoleon Hill, his kind of his imagination about what it would be like to interview the devil. And so the whole book is just that interview between him and the devil, just asking questions. And he's trying to find out, well, how would the devil rule the world? How would the enemy of all things, how would he do things? One of the interesting things in that book was, Napoleon in the book asked him, he said, so if you were going to take over the world, like, what is one tactic that you would do to capture the hearts and minds of people? And he said, now remember, this was written in 1937. The devil said in this book, he said, I would encourage people to offer their opinion on matters that do not concern them in a public way. Now, I want you to think about that in 2022 with Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Our entire world is people offering their opinions on things that doesn't really concern them. There's a rule in my mastermind called no ultra-crepidarians. And that word, if you go look it up, an ultra-crepidarian is someone who offers their opinion on matters that do not concern them, but present the opinion as facts when they have no basis to give them as facts. And we don't allow that in our mastermind. And I think that's what Twitter has become. I'm thankful that Elon Musk bought Twitter. I actually closed my account down because of the woke crap that was going on Twitter and how everything that was going on there. I was not interested. But I'm thankful that we've got these platforms like Twitter and even Facebook, even though I hate Facebook. Like I'm thankful we have them because we're able to connect with people in ways that are meaningful. But the world is suffering the consequences, just like the devil in Outwitting the Devil talked about. I'm just going to encourage people to give their opinion on matters that don't concern them, and that's going to be one of the downfalls of the world. I think it was in Plato's Republic. It was Socrates who was being asked the question about what is justice, and he was bringing all these people in to ask, these big thinkers of the time, what is justice? What does justice mean? And they all gave their ideas of what justice is. And Socrates kept saying, no. And at the end, they said, well, what is it? What is justice? And he said, minding your own business. Now, he didn't mean it the way we colloquially mean it today in the United States or in the Western culture. We say, hey, mind your business. In other words, keep your nose out of my business. Don't be worried about my business. What he was meaning is, at the time, the mind your business was, if you're a shoemaker, make shoes. If you're a sandal maker, make sandals. If you're a robe maker, make robes. If you're a tent maker, make tents. And don't tell people who do the robes how to do their job if you're a tent maker. Don't tell the shoemakers how to make shoes if you're a sandal maker, and so forth. And he said that's justice. When the world adheres to that, we have justice in the world because nobody's trying to get involved in other people's stuff. And the Outwitting the Devil book that I read this year for the first time really changed my perspective on a lot of things. Not only did it and open up my perspective to that, but there's so many other concepts in that book that are about how we drift through this world with no aim, no definite chief aim or purpose. So I highly recommend this book, Outwitting the Devil. You can get it for, like I said, for free on YouTube. Interesting thing about, and I'm showing right now for those of you watching on YouTube, this is the action guide, and the Sound Wisdom is the publishing company. And they actually sent this to me as a gift because I'd ordered something else from their website. But Outwitting the Devil Action Guide is something I'm going to be going through in 2023, and I'm actually buying a copy of this for my son, and I want to encourage him for the two of us to go through this together. I think it'll be a good exercise. Now, this other book that I read is called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is one of the most fascinating books in the world. It's probably the basis for every self-help or self-improvement book that's ever been written. Every business coach, life coach can thank Napoleon Hill. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on that because Think and Grow Rich, of course, most people who are listening to this, you've probably heard of that. But this book is changing my life day by day. And what's interesting about this book is that it was written in 1933. It was based on research that Napoleon Hill did by interviewing over 500 of the world's most powerful men at the time. We're talking, Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein. I'm at a loss for all the people that he interviewed. Rockefeller, anybody and everybody. He interviewed these folks and then discovered through that process the secrets of it. And I know it says Think and Grow Rich, and it does have something to do with money. It would be silly for me to say it isn't, but that's not really the purpose. So I know that when I first heard of this book, I thought Think and Grow Rich is just somebody trying to get rich. No, there's so much more to it. But I think that every human should read the book 3 times, and it is that important. As a matter of fact, part of the book teaches something called autosuggestion, which now we know to be 100% factual about how our brains work. That in 1933 was complete speculation. So in Outwitting the Devil, that book was written 4 years later in 1937. But the family didn't want to release the book in 1937, Outwitting the Devil, because the concept of just interviewing the devil, that just sounded weird. So they didn't release that book until 2011. But a lot of the concepts in Outwitting the Devil are first foreshadowed in Think and Grow Rich. And there are things called autosuggestion, where we can autosuggest to our brain, where we talk to ourselves, we affirm in ourselves things that we want to happen, and they in fact will happen. It's not magic, it's not incantation, it's not woo-woo. This is actual science. And he didn't know it at the time, but he just knew that these 500 powerful men who'd become very successful as entrepreneurs and business tycoons, he said these guys are doing something different, and it was about their mindset. Is about what they thought about. My dad used to have this thing on his desk when we were kids, and we actually made fun of it. And I don't know why we made fun of it, because I don't know, but it said, what I think about, I bring about. I don't know where he got that. I need to ask him. Maybe I'll ask him then that. But that's what this is about. What you think about, you bring about. Listen to this. I'm gonna share with you some of the autosuggestions formulas that were part of this workbook. So I actually bought the Think and Grow Rich workbook by Joel Fatinos, I think that's how you say his last name, and August Gold. And it looks like this, for those of you that are watching this on YouTube. And I'm going through this with one of my mindset coach and a good friend, Dr. Justin Mosley. But part of what they teach in there is that this power of autosuggestions and these self-confidence, being confident in yourself. So I'm going to read to you the ones that I do these every single morning when I ride my bicycle. I say these out loud, and they're part of my daily just cadence. I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action toward its attainment. Just think about it. You say that over and over and over again. I know I have the ability to achieve whatever it is that is my definite purpose in life, and I will demand of myself persistent, continuous action toward its attainment. That's great. You can imagine saying that, the mindset that you would have to become successful and to make an impact in the world. And then the next one is, I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. I mean, think about that. I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Our physical reality, your physical reality, anything that you experience started in your mind. It started with a thought. The car that you're driving right now, or the shoes that you're wearing while you're jogging, all started in the thoughts of some individual and eventually became reality. Your life, the things that you're experiencing now, good or bad, started in your mind. They started with how you thought about things. And there's power in the way that we think. The third daily affirmation autosuggestion I read every day is, it says this, I know through the principle of autosuggestion, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of obtaining the object back of it. And how true that is. If we persistently hold something in our mind, a desire, our bodies, our minds, our brains, the way God designed us, is going to seek a path to get to the thing that we desire. There's this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system, RAS. And the reticular activating system, the RAS, it makes, let me tell you, this is what it does. What kind of car you drive? All right. Before you bought that car, how many of those cars do you see on the road? Probably none. Very few. Now that you drive that car, you probably see them everywhere. I drive one of my vehicles is a 2016 Chevy Silverado HD 2500. It's white and it has a special package on it. They didn't put on very many trucks back then. And I get compliments on it all the time. It's a really good looking truck. I like it. I never saw those trucks until I bought one. Now, I don't see them everywhere because they didn't make very many, but I see them. And that's your RAS, that's your reticular activating system telling you to look for the things that you think about. What you think about, you bring about. And so what I learned in this Think and Grow Rich book and Outwitting the Devil is that when we think about things, we persistently hold something in our minds, we will seek that reality. That's just a great thought. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. The last one is this that I read every day. It says, I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
Hey, I want to talk with you about one of my favorite tools as a salesperson and as an entrepreneur, and that tool is Dub. I want you to imagine for a minute getting an email from somebody, and instead of just being the plain old crappy text in an email, rather than just having a bunch of HTML where it's pictures and stuff, what if it was a video? And the video had a little GIF and it was playing right there in the email as soon as you opened it, and it had your name. Like it said, hello, Jason, check this out. And then you clicked play and it played right there in your inbox in the window. And it was somebody trying to tell you how great you are, how awesome they can help you, how good they can help you out. That is the power of video emails. I want you to try Dub out. I've been using it for years. I have closed countless millions of dollars in sales over the last, 6 years or so using Dub, and you can do it too. All you got to do is go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. That's DUBB. Therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. Dub will help you make an impact in your sales through video. It's going to help you with, they've even got a CRM built into it. You can build landing pages. You can do campaigns, even SMS campaigns. You can set up automations to manage workflows and maximize conversions. And like I said, they've got an existing software platform inside Dub to take your CRM to the next level. Try this out. Get a free special just by being a listener to the podcast. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. Get 2 weeks to try it for free and 50% off your first 2 months. That's therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. 40 years ago, you weren't in business unless you had your business in the yellow pages. You remember those things? And 30 years ago, you weren't in business unless you had a door-to-door salesman. 20 years ago, you weren't in business unless you had a website. And today, you're not in business unless you're doing social media content. Am I right? Social media content. Social media content in the form of like micro content, which is 30 to 60 second spots on Instagram Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts. That's the way business is done. As a matter of fact, that may be how you found out about this podcast or me as a business coach. This medium that we're using today to communicate what we do is vitally important. And just recording yourself isn't enough. You've got to do it right. And my friends over at Story do it right. And one of the problems with doing it wrong is that you sit around thinking, well, what the heck am I going to record? What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? Like, I don't know what to talk about. Well, Story takes all of that away from you. Stop wasting time trying to come up with content, because Story will send you a video prompt on what to record. You can pick the categories you want to record in, whether it's real estate, entrepreneurship, finance, relationship, leadership, life insurance. It could be anything. Don't waste time on that. And by the way, if you're not confident in talking on video, or if the video editing portion takes up way too much of your time, Story will edit the videos to perform well on social media. They add the subtitles, the pop-ups, the zoom cuts. They remove all the filler words like and They remove the awkward pauses. And then they take that video and post it for you. They write the captions, they add the relevant hashtags, and they post it on the platforms that you care about the most. It's exactly what you need to be in business today and to be successful at it. So if you want to learn how to do social media the way the influencers do, you need to go to therealjasonduncan.com/story. And that's story with 2 Y's. Why? Because they're awesome. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/story. That's STORYY for 10% off your first 3 months to try Story out. You're going to thank me later. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces that I wish to use and the cooperation of other people. And I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I mean, think about how cool that is. If you say those things every day, these thoughts that are in our minds, and that's one of the greatest parts of 2022 for me, is this ability to understand how our brains work. Napoleon Hill helped me understand that, how God designed us to seek out things based on what we think in our subconscious. It's such a fascinating topic. I could probably do a whole podcast like a series on this and bring in guests to talk about it. I think it would be fascinating to do that. I ended up actually writing my own daily affirmation called the Duncan Daily Affirmation, and I'm not going to share it here. It's more personal. So, but this Duncan Daily Affirmation that I wrote based on these things that I'm learning in this book that I read, these books that I read this year, have changed my outset on life. I don't have bad days anymore. Like, I know that the bad day is caused by my just negative thinking. A positive thought and a negative thought cannot coexist at the same time. Positive emotions, negative emotions cannot coexist. So I choose to have positive thoughts, positive emotions, and I bring those things into my life. I will attract those good things into my life. It's not woo-woo. It's not magic. It's not incantation. It's not new age. It's the way God designed our bodies, the way he designed our brains. Tap into that. So some other books that I read this year, I read a book by Richard J. Foster, who's one of my favorite so-called Christian authors, if you want to use that term. But this is called The Challenge of the Disciplined Life. And it's about, I guess the subtitle is Christian Reflections on Money, Sex, and Power. Very great, just really interesting book about how money, sex, and power play into our lives and how we live a disciplined life in those areas of money, sex, and power. Richard Foster has written many amazing books, The Celebration of Discipline probably being one of the best. Also read. I didn't finish it, but it is a very good book. It's $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy, who has kind of jumped onto the scene in 2022 as one of the top entrepreneurs out there on the social media scene. But $100 Million Offers, how to make offers so good people feel stupid saying no. Really good book. I haven't finished it yet. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. And I need to go through and finish it up. And I actually had a client of mine recommend that book to me. So thank you for making that recommendation, Nathaniel. The last book that I want to talk about that I read, I just finished it, and it's not. I don't have a physical copy. I read it on Kindle on my iPad, but it's called Quantum Lens by Douglas E. Richards, and it's a novel, but it's a thriller novel based on the idea of how our minds work. And so there's this idea of 0-point energy, which actually is a real thing. I'm not going to get too deep. I'll get nerdy on you. But the whole book is based on the premise of how powerful our minds are. And if we really, truly tapped into the power of our minds, what we could accomplish. Now, the book takes it to extreme where people can fly and all that kind of stuff because of their power of their minds. But the basic reality, or the basic theory of the book, is based in reality. So Quantum Lens by Douglas E. Richards. It's a quick read. I read it in just a few weeks, casually, and finished it on an airplane. It was just a really, really fascinating book. Douglas E. Richards is a great author anyway. So some of the events that I experienced in 2022, just kind of reflecting on the year, I went to one of the best conferences I've ever been to in my entire life called the Forward event, put on by my good friend Neil Dingra, who is killing it on social media. You can go at Neil Home, Neelhome, if you want to follow Neil. Tell him I said hello. But Neil puts on this conference, and we met quite by accident. We met at Brad Lee's office in Las Vegas back in May. He was talking to Brad about being a speaker on the show, on the conference, and I happened to be there recording Brad's episode, or an episode on Brad's podcast. And the three of us met. I became friends with Neil, ended up going to his conference, and ended up joining his Forward Mastermind. I also had a great event. I got to go experience my first TED event, the TED conferences. I went to TEDx in Wilmington back in April, where I gave my first TED Talk. Yeah, so it's exciting. So 2022 allowed me the opportunity to get on an international stage and talk about the ironic prison of entrepreneurship. I even went to my first dual sport motorcycle event. Never been to one before. I love motorcycles, for those of you that listen to me and know me, but I'd never been to a dual sport event. And a friend of mine, good friend of mine, Mickey Mooney, invited me to go and even to ride his motorcycle because he had hurt his arm, couldn't ride. So I went to March Moto Madness over in Tellico Plains, Tennessee, and had a good time back in April. So some of the accomplishments for my year, I celebrated my 27th wedding anniversary to my beautiful wife, Christy. Hey, baby, I love you, even though you never listen to my show. But she's my best friend. We met when we were 15 and 16 on a blind date, and we've been together ever since. As she says, we've raised one another. So this year was a good year because we celebrated our 27th. I also this year launched my very first ever mastermind called the Exeter Club, and you can go to the exeterclub.com to learn more. It's EXITER. So it's the word exit with ER on the end. So the Exeter Club is an exclusive mastermind that's curated for entrepreneurs who want to seek to live the exit lifestyle. And my goal was to have 12 members by the end of 2022, and we just barely hit that. And my goal is to have 50 by the end of next year. And we are changing people's lives, changing families, because we're getting men out of the weeds of running business, back into their families, back into the things that matter to them. And so that launched this year, and it's probably one of my favorite things that has happened all year. I absolutely love it. Another thing that was kind of a notable thing that happened this year is that my podcast hit 100 episodes. So I got to my 100th episode on the podcast this year. And if you haven't listened to it, you can go back and listen to episode 100, and you can see in that episode, or hear in that episode, where I talk about the 100 definitions of success, because every one of my guests, almost without fail, I ask what is their definition of success. And I've recorded all those. So I spent some time on that show just talking about the different definitions of success and how they are the same and how they're different, and the different perspectives on what success is, how you achieve it, where you get it. And so that was kind of a cool accomplishment this year. Another accomplishment this year, as I already said, I did my first TED Talk this year, and I've been invited to speak at another one this year. So I'm excited about the potential of being able to do that. And then I started writing a book this year, and I'm almost finished with it. I hope to be able to launch that in Q1 of 2023. More details are coming on that. And then one of the coolest things that happened this year that wasn't directly related to business or anything, but Brad Lee, who is the host of Dropping Bombs podcast, one of the top podcasts in the world right now, invited me to be on his show. He was on my show back in 2021, and a single 30-second clip from his show has at this point 24.5 million views on Instagram alone. There's another, 3 or 4 million on Facebook. It's got 755,000 likes, 8,600 comments. And I'm gonna play that clip for you right now on the show, in the event that you missed it, because it has nothing to do with business. I just celebrated my 27th wedding anniversary before I recorded this. Brad and I were talking about that pre-show. And then during the show, he just happened to ask me a question about my marriage relationship with my wife. And I answered it in the way that I'm about to play. So I'm going to share this. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to share the screen. And let's see if I can do this. I think I can share it on the screen. If you're listening, forgive me for this, but here it is. When we got married 27 years ago, that we would never mention divorce, use the word divorce, joke about it. It's not an option for us. Where I have friends who in mixed company would say, yeah, my wife would divorce me if I did this. We don't make those jokes because we know that's not an option. So we burn the ship. We burn the ships. That option is not on the table for us. So when we have fights, which we do, like when we get upset with each other, we make sure that is not an option. We got to make this work. This is where we're ride or die. Even above the kids, man. Like the kids know they're second in this whole thing. The kids are the kids biologically, but the decision I've made is with her, and she is number one, 100%. So we burn the ships. There's no way out.
Well, maybe that's how you got to do it then.
Yeah, that's the way we did it. My wife and I. All right. So, yeah, that little clip there. To almost 26 million views on Instagram. Hard to believe that many people are interested in that concept. And the sad part is how many people have what I believe to be negative and skewed views of marriage. They believe that marriage is optional, that you can choose a wife or choose a husband, and then if you don't like them anymore, you just go get a different one. And I don't subscribe to that. And so anyway, one of I've gone viral at least once. Some notable podcast guests I've had on this year. This is certainly not all of them, and there's no way that I could list. I recorded. I can't remember how many we recorded this year, but I had Rock Thomas, who's an amazing business coach, on the show. Josh Wilson, who's one fantastic connector. Avery Carl, who started a business 6 years ago, now is eclipsing $1 billion in annual revenue. Omar Madrano, who's got his own book, What If It Did Work. Dr. Sasha Becker, who's not an entrepreneur, came on my show. We talked about the effects of what happens to businesses when the founder dies. And we looked into that concept and what that means to us. Shaheen came on the show, and he's probably one of the most interesting guests I've ever had because of his background. Ended up doing $1 billion in revenue in his 20s, selling it was synthetic ecstasy, so legal and synthetic. And interesting story. He doesn't, of course, do that anymore. But it was an interesting story of his entrepreneurial journey. I had Bill Caskey on the show from the Advanced Selling Podcast. If you're a salesman, listen to the Advanced Selling Podcast with Bill Caskey and Brian Neal. I've been listening to those guys for absolutely forever, and it was an honor to have him on my show. Evan Carmichael, who's one of the top YouTube guys in the world, came on my show. Had a great talk with him. Graham Cochran, read about him in a CNBC article. And then reached out to him and invited him to be on the show. And then ultimately, I ended up joining his mastermind called the Epic Mastermind, which is fantastic. Renee Rodriguez and talked about the neuroscience of success. David Meltzer about how to get to, how he lost $150 million and everything, including his mom's house, and then built that back. Avery Carl, I think I already mentioned Avery. Jesse Lee Ward, who's the number one direct marketing, multi-level marketing person in the world. Unbelievable story about what she built. And then most recently I had a guy named Russ Ruffino on, who does about $1.4 million a month in revenue with his coaching business, which is just absolutely phenomenal. So and I've ended up joining his coaching group called Clients on Demand. So I had some really great, and that's not all. I had so many great guests on the show this year. Some positive things that happened to me this year. I'm going to share the negative ones too, but the positive things that happened this year: we sold our house. We made an absolute killing on it. We sold it at the right time. We sold back in February, and just absolutely killed it. And we bought our first short-term rental. So we have a cabin in the mountains now that we rent out. We got guests in there this weekend, and guests there all next 2 weeks with Christmas and New Year's. I committed in my 47th year on the planet to the word discipline, started working out, never really liked doing it. Hired a coach at FitRev here in Hendersonville, Jason Santiago, and he coached me for, I guess, most of the year. And then eventually I decided to start working out at home, and I bought a TRX straps and started riding my bicycle every day, and absolutely love it. I'm in the best shape I've been in a long time, and I got more to go, got more to do. I launched an Entrepreneur Master Series webinar series this year, and it's been going fantastic, meeting some amazing guests on that. Go look that up at therealjasonduncan.com/EMS. I picked up 2 sponsors for the podcast that are like for real sponsors, that are my sponsors, not just general sponsors, but Story and Dub, D-U-B-B. You can go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub to learn about what they do. And you can go to therealjasonduncan.com/story to learn about what they do. But Dub is video emails, and Story is social media content creation. And they're both fantastic companies. You probably heard them already on the ad on this show. We got to do a helicopter ride to the Grand Canyon, my wife and I did, and that was really fascinating. We had such a good time doing that. I took a 3,000-mile Harley trip out to Telluride, Colorado with some friends and back this summer. Fantastic, epic ride. Had a flat tire, had my gauges go out on me, but had fun nevertheless. And then we had, with my Exeter Club Mastermind, which launched this year in January, we had 2 amazing retreats. And the guys that are part of that group, guys, I know you're listening because you support what I'm doing, but I love y'all. And man, I can't imagine what's going to happen this next year. It's going to be phenomenal. One other notable is that I tried an iPhone. If you know me, I'm an Android guy. I have been for years, and I love Android. And everybody been telling me you should do the iPhone, So I tried it. So I bought the brand new iPhone 14 Pro Max. My wife got one. My daughter already had an iPhone. And we made full-on commitment to do it. And I lived with it for about a month, and just, nope, couldn't do it. I sent it back, and I got a brand new Google Pixel Pixel 7 Pro, and it is the best phone I ever had in my life. And I actually made a definitive list of why Android is superior to iOS, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the top 10. Number 10, Google Photos is better than Apple Photos. Google Photos is better. Number 9, Android users are not snobs. I was at an event this past weekend. I was the only Android user in the event. It was a small event, and nobody was snobbish in like a legit way. But you know what I'm talking about. You Apple fanboys, you're snobs. You think that you're better somehow. I don't understand that, but Android users aren't. So that's why Android's better. Number 8, the call screening and the spam filter on a Google Pixel is phenomenal. I don't have any spam calls. I don't get them. And when I had that iPhone for a month, I got calls every single day from people spamming me. Don't get that on an Android. The messaging function, number 7, the messaging function in an Android is a lot better. And I know you green bubble people and you blue bubble people you over there on the iPhone thing. I'm telling you, if you ever used Google Messages, you would know how superior it is on this side of the fence. I can hit send later. You don't even have that function. I can send texts later. That's just one small feature that's so much better. And I know I'm going to get some hate for this, but this is a year in review for me. It's my show. Number 6, the Google keyboard is better on the phone. There's predictive typing, and you can hide the keyboard when you're in apps. The select tool is easier to use. The common symbols are easier to get to. The keyboard's just better. Number 5, notifications and settings access is so easy to get to on an Android. Much better than iOS. You just swipe down from the top. You grab them. Google integration, number 4, is much better on the Google phone. And as you might imagine, it is made by Google. But Google integration was not very good on the iOS, in my estimation. Number 3 is widgets. We got widgets. I know iPhone users are finally getting them. We've had them for years. And the widget functionality on Android is so much better. And then number 2 is USB-C. Here's my phone if you want to look at it. This little connector here is USB-C. That's what everything connects to. This camera I'm talking into right now is USB-C. This microphone, USB-C. My MacBook Pro, USB-C. My Mac Studio. I'm an Apple guy, right? It's not an Apple thing. I just don't like iOS. Everything has USB-C except the stupid iPhone. And I know they're going to change. You're going to say, well, they're changing. Well, why are they waiting? They should have caught up with everybody else. And then the number 1 reason why Android's better than iOS, the back button. The back button. Folks, anywhere I am, anywhere in this phone, I have a back button at the bottom left of my screen. I can go back anywhere. And I know you have to, the iPhone users, you evidently have really long thumbs because your back stuff is at the top left. I know this part of the show, I'm going to get more hate for anything else, but that was my year. I tried the iPhone. I tried to come over to your side. It's a great phone. The cameras are good. It's not glitchy. It's stable. It's a good looking phone. But I think Android operating system is better. So there you go. Some other negative notables. So there's some bad things that happened in my year. I attempted to throw my first conference ever called the Exit Lifestyle Conference, and it did not go off. Mainly because of COVID, just the COVID restrictions around this back in February. So that didn't happen. I attempted to buy a motorcycle dealership, and that fell through at the last hour, and I was really seriously bummed out about that. I talked about that a lot on the show, actually. I also attempted to buy an apparel company. It's something I don't talk about a lot, and I completely actually forgot about it until I was doing notes for the show. Tried to buy an apparel company with 2 other guys, and we went in together, and then the seller changed the price by $1 million at the last minute. We were making an offer, so that didn't work out. I had an Amazon store that had been running Amazon, and they shut me down in January, and then they confiscated $32,000 of my money and still haven't given it back. So don't understand that. I hired a company to help me, Riverside Consulting, and they sucked. They didn't do anything to help me whatsoever. They didn't do squat. They just took my money and didn't help. Can't get my money back. I don't know what's going on there. So that was negative. So it's not all good. My hard money lending company, I had 3 of my customers not pay me back, just stiff me for $190,000. So that sucked. I even sued and pursued and won judgment against one of them, and I'm about to file suit on the other 2. And but they just don't pay. Like I don't understand. I don't understand why you would take money and not pay it back. Like, loser, come on, man. Like you took money, give it back. So that happened. That was negative. I had I went through 2 assistants that quit on me this year. That wasn't happy. Had one who quit because she needed more money. And, I'm just a one-man band here with a coaching company. So she took a job for more money. I don't blame her. She was awesome. And then the other one who was with me for about 6 months quit because of a major life thing that threw a monkey wrench into her life. And she she had to move on, and I get that. I've got a new assistant now. She's phenomenal. But those were negative experiences. And then, probably another sad thing is that my best friends moved to Florida. They up and left me. And I'm not mad at them or anything, but I understand why they did it. They wanted to do it, but it still sucks to lose your friends. So those are some positives and negatives that happened for me in 2022. I want to finish out my conversation about my year in review by just telling you some coaches and some masterminds that I've had this year. So Hank Norman, who's one of the celebrity marketing coaches, like personality coaches and video coaches, was my coach for about a year and a half. And we worked up until about April, May this year. He's a great guy. Appreciate you, Hank Norman, everything you did to help me out. I was a part of the Epic Mastermind with Graham Cochran for a while. Those guys are killing it. They're all coaches. If you're interested in, if you're a coach looking for a mastermind just for coaches, go look up Graham Cochran and the Epic Mastermind. Dr. Justin Mosley, the Mindset Doctor, became my Mindset Doctor and a good friend this year in 2022, and also part of my mastermind. He's one of our certified coaches and phenomenal coach to help me through my mindset, what I need to be thinking about. I joined Russ Rufino's coaching group, Clients on Demand, after he was a guest on my podcast, and wonderful dude. And the program that he's doing is fantastic. I highly recommend it. And then the Forward Mastermind with Neil Dingra, I joined that as well. So a lot of cool things have been going on in 2022. So I try to share negatives and try to share positives, give you a little bit of my insight. And I know your iPhone people probably hate me now, but I still love you, and I'm still glad that you listen to the show. And if you would not you do me a favor and go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review and subscribe, and irrespective of the fact that you see me on an Android. But I love you guys. You're my audience. You're listening. You're paying attention. And that's why I do this show. I do this show to bring you high-quality guests. And I've got a slate of guests that are coming in 2023 that are going to be even better. As a matter of fact, I'm booking people now already into the spring. We're already backed up quite a ways. So I'm excited about what's going to happen in 2023. I thank you for listening. Now, I told you at the beginning I had a special offer for you. So for the last year and a half, I've been running a program called the Business Accelerator. And it's based on these 4 core principles that I teach on how to exit without exiting. I'm actually turning that into a course called the 10-Hour Entrepreneur. And so I've got a brand new LinkedIn group called the 10-Hour Entrepreneur. You can just go search for 10-Hour Entrepreneur on LinkedIn. You can find it. And I'm starting this course in January. But if you want to know what it's about, I put together a 45-minute webinar just about this, and the webinar is called 5 Shifts Smart but Stressed Entrepreneurs Use to Run Their Companies in as little as 10 hours a week without losing a single cent in profit. And if you want to look at that webinar, it's completely free, 45 minutes of training. You can go to therealjasonduncan.com/5shifts. That's the number 5 and the word shifts. So 5 shifts smart but stressed business owners, entrepreneurs use to run their business in as little as 10 hours a week without losing a single cent in profit. So go check out that webinar. It's completely free. therealjasonduncan.com/5shifts. That's the number 5, SHIFTS. Thank you for listening. Please make sure you tune in again next week, actually next year, because that's when it'll be next year when I talk with yet another very successful, amazing entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Until then, I am the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. Are you an entrepreneur who feels trapped in the weeds of daily operations, not experiencing the freedom you thought you'd have as a business owner? Want to know the way out? Take Jason's free exit readiness assessment to see how close you are to getting ready to experience true freedom and success as an entrepreneur. Go to amireadytoexit.com today. That's amireadytoexit.com. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.